Picture this. You're a parent, a doctor, one of the smartest men of your era. You invented technology that powered the entire industrial revolution. You have money, you have access to the best minds in the world, and your child is dying in front of you, and there is nothing you can do. That was James when in 1804, his son Gregory, described by a friend as literally the most beautiful youth I ever saw, was coughing up blood, wasting away, being consumed from the inside. James Watt, the man we literally named a unit of power after, built an inhaling device, experimented with gases, tried everything science could offer. And Gregory still died at 27. Now here's the part that should stop you cold. Over 1 million people died of that same disease in 2023. And unlike James Watt, we actually have a cure. We've had one since the 1950s. We just don't give it to everyone. That disease is tuberculosis. And today we're diving into John Green's stunning new book, Everything Is Tuberculosis, a book that is equal parts history, medical thriller, moral reckoning, and love story. Green is the author of The Fault in Our Stars, but this might be the most important thing he's ever written. Let's get into it. John Green opens this book the way only he can, personally. He tells us about his great-uncle Stokes, a young man in the 1920s who went to see a doctor in Alabama, got an x-ray, and heard the radiologist say, "I have never seen a case that lived over 2 months." Stokes died at 29. Green's great-grandfather, himself a country doctor, couldn't save his own son. Then Green hits you with the numbers. In just the last 2 centuries, tuberculosis has caused over 1 billion human deaths. One estimate suggests TB has killed around 1 in every 7 people who ever lived. In 2023, it killed more people than malaria, typhoid, and war combined. And yet most of us think of tuberculosis as a 19th century problem, a Victorian-era disease of pale poets. Ancient history. It isn't. Here's the biology, and it's genuinely fascinating. Tuberculosis is caused by a bacterium called Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It spreads through the air when someone coughs, sneezes, or even just exhales. Right now, between 1/4 and 1/3 of all living humans have been infected with it. Most people's immune systems wall it off into dormant lumps of calcified tissue called tubercles, and the bacteria just waits, slowly, sometimes for decades. But in 5 to 10% of infected people, the immune system can't hold it back. The bacteria multiply. They choke the lungs. They invade the lymph nodes, the spine, the brain. Without treatment, most people die. And the death is brutal, drowning in blood, gasping for air, the lungs, as one autopsy physician noted after examining John Keats, completely gone. What makes TB especially dangerous is precisely what makes it so mysterious. It moves slowly. While a cold spreads in days, TB can incubate for decades. You might not know you're infected until something weakens your immune system, malnutrition, HIV, stress, diabetes, and then it wakes up. And it's wildly infectious once active. The average untreated case spreads to 10 to 15 people per year. This was the great silent killer at the center of human history, and almost nobody talks about it. One of the most entertaining parts of this book is when Green shows you just how deeply tuberculosis is woven into the world we inhabit in ways you'd never guess. Did you know tuberculosis helped give us the cowboy hat? A hat maker named John from New Jersey got diagnosed with consumption in the 1850s, headed west on doctor's orders. Dry air was thought to help. Recovered. Noticed that hats in the West were terrible, and went on to found a Stetson hat company. The cowboy hat is a tuberculosis souvenir. Did you know TB played a role in World War I? 3 of the 6 assassins who plotted to kill Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the event that triggered the war, were 19-year-old consumptives from Belgrade. They knew they were dying. They had nothing to lose. Their names were Kabranovic, Grabez, and Princip. The assassination itself was almost farcical. Bombs thrown and missed, a wrong turn on the street, a driver who didn't know the roads. But because Gavrilo Princip happened to be standing at the precise spot where Franz Ferdinand's car stopped to reverse, he fired the shots that started the Great War. All 3 conspirators were dead of tuberculosis before the war even ended. and TB literally helped New Mexico become a U.S. state. Congress kept refusing statehood because of the territory's non-white majority. So New Mexican officials started aggressively marketing the desert air as a cure for tuberculosis, recruiting wealthy white consumptives from the East. It worked. By 1910, roughly 10% of New Mexicans were tuberculosis patients. Congress finally approved statehood in 1912. Green's point isn't that TB caused any of these things. His point is far more interesting. TB revealed and exploited the fault lines already present in history: racial hierarchies, colonialism, poverty, inequality. The disease didn't create injustice. It followed its trails. Here's one of the most haunting and strange parts of the book. For centuries in Europe and America, tuberculosis wasn't just feared, it was romanticized, celebrated, fetishized. Consumption, as it was called, was understood to be an inherited condition of the sensitive and brilliant. Famous consumptives included Keats, Chopin, the Bronte sisters, Kafka, Simone Bolivar, Chekhov. And because so many artists died of it, the intellectual establishment decided that TB must cause creative genius. They called this spes tisica, the consumptive spirit, the idea that as the body withered, the soul flowered. Lord Byron literally wrote that he wished he could die of consumption so women would say how interesting he looked in dying. It gets stranger. Women with consumption were considered more beautiful. The pale skin, the rosy feverish cheeks, the wide sunken eyes. These became the beauty standards of the 18th and 19th centuries. Women applied belladonna drops to dilate their pupils to look more consumptive. Magazines offered tips on applying rouge to mimic the hectic glow of fever. A Victorian photographer named Henry Peach Robinson composed a famous photograph of a young, consumptive woman fading away. It was considered so beautiful that Prince Albert bought a print. Green points out something crucial: romanticization and stigmatization are not opposites. They're two sides of the same coin. Both make the sick into an other, someone fundamentally different from the rest of us. Romanticization says the ill are more than human. Stigmatization says the ill are less than human. Either way, the ill are treated as not quite one of us, which makes it easier to ignore their suffering. And there is a racial dimension to this romanticization that proved deeply deadly. Consumption was called the white man's plague. Physicians insisted it couldn't afflict black people, indigenous people, or colonized populations. They lacked, supposedly, the sensitivity and civilization required. This wasn't just wrong, it was catastrophic. It meant that TB raging through enslaved, colonized, and marginalized communities went undetected, uncounted, and untreated for generations. For the next 50 years after Koch's discovery, tuberculosis remained incurable. Patients were sent to sanatoriums, controlled facilities where they rested, breathed clean air, and tried to stay positive. The lucky ones survived. Most didn't. The experience was dehumanizing. Patients were told when to sleep, what to think, who to see. Crying was sometimes forbidden. Children spent years separated from parents. Green tells the story of Gail Perkins, who arrived at a Massachusetts sanatorium at age 3 and didn't leave for 12 years. Her best friend Angie's father, not wanting to devastate her, forged letters from Angie's dead sister week after week, trying to keep hope alive. One day, Gail saw a body on a stretcher being wheeled to the morgue. She knew immediately it was Angie. She was 8 years old. And then, suddenly, almost miraculously, the cure arrived. In the mid-1940s and early 1950s, a series of antibiotics were developed: streptomycin, isoniazid, pyrazinamide, ethambutol, rifampin. Combine them, and tuberculosis becomes curable. Sanatoriums emptied in just a few years. In the UK, TB death rates dropped 90% within a decade of streptomycin's introduction. Among the early recipients of streptomycin was a critically ill young Army officer named Bob Dole, who survived to become a U.S. Senator and presidential candidate. But here is the heart of the book's injustice. The cure went where the disease wasn't. In the U.S. and Western Europe, TB essentially became a memory by the 1970s. In Ethiopia, in the 1990s, tuberculosis mortality still resembled the US in 1882, before Koch had even identified the bacteria. In dozens of countries, the treatment either wasn't available or reached patients only sporadically. The reasoning given was a grotesque echo of colonialism. Poor communities couldn't be trusted to take medication correctly. Their patients were too childlike to follow a regimen. There was no point treating them. And so, while the rich world declared victory over TB, 1 million people a year continue to die. This is where the book becomes something else entirely. In 2019, John Green visited Laka Government Hospital in Sierra Leone, a former leprosy isolation facility, a place people said you go to die. A small boy grabbed his shirt and walked him around the hospital, full of energy, speaking excellent English, introducing himself as Henry. Green assumed he was the son of a staff member. He was 17 years old. He looked 9 because he had grown up malnourished, and TB had further emaciated him. He had been living with active tuberculosis for more than half his life. Green tells Henry's story in heartbreaking detail. The boy born into a country hollowed out by colonialism and a decade-long civil war. His mother, Aisatu, who sold cooking oil in the market and prayed for rice. His little sister, Favor, who died at 7 because they couldn't afford a surgery. Henry's father pulling him off his tuberculosis medication at age 6, convinced the drugs weren't working, turning to a faith healer instead. An understandable choice in a country where hospitals lacked running water and electricity. Henry contracted drug-resistant tuberculosis. The bacteria had evolved to evade the first-line drugs. For years, he was treated with a ripe drug cocktail. It failed. He was transferred to Laka. He received the injectables, a toxic regimen including a drug called kanamycin that causes permanent hearing loss in over 20% of patients. While taking it, Henry went partially deaf in 1 ear. He said nothing, afraid they'd stop treating him. There was a better drug available. Bedaquiline, developed largely with public money, could cure his type of TB without hearing loss. But Johnson & Johnson had a patent on it and charged prices the Sierra Leonean Health Ministry could not afford. So Henry went deaf instead. His friend Thompson, who occupied the bed across from him, died. "You're next, Henry. You're next," Henry told himself. Henry's father came to the hospital in a rage, screaming at the Ethiopian doctor, Dr. Jairam Tefera, threatening to take Henry home to die. Dr. Jairam, calm and exhausted, said to him, "If this fails, come and beat me. Don't hit me today. Beat me later if this fails." And then, through extraordinary effort, drugs sourced from neighboring Liberia, others flown in from Lesotho, Henry received a tailored new regimen. Within a week, the open sores on his neck began to close. Within a month, he gained 10 pounds. Within months, there was no bacteria detectable in his sputum. Henry Ryder survived. Here's what John Green wants us to understand. Henry's story is not a miracle. It's a case study in what happens when the right people refuse to accept a world organized around profit rather than human life. In the 1990s, tuberculosis experts said drug-resistant TB was too expensive to treat in poor countries. Partners in Health, a global health nonprofit, proved otherwise, treating patients in Peru with individually tailored regimens and achieving 85% cure rates, comparable to the world's best hospitals. The global health community shifted. Guidelines changed. The price of MDR-TB treatment fell from $15,000 per patient to $1,500. TB survivors like Fumiza Tizzle, who lost her hearing to the injectables just like Henry, sued pharmaceutical companies, fought patent evergreening, and drove the price of bedaquiline down by 60% almost overnight. Today, largely because of their efforts, a course of MDR-TB treatment that once cost $15,000 could be delivered for around $300. Vicious cycles are real. Poverty fuels TB. TB deepens poverty. Colonialism hollowed out healthcare systems. Broken healthcare systems make TB worse. But virtuous cycles are also real, and they are powered by individual human beings who refuse to give up. Henry today is a student at the University of Sierra Leone, studying human resources and management. He runs a YouTube channel, He fundraises for clean water. He goes back to Lhasa to make videos for other patients, telling them, "I am one of the TB patients. I got discharged, and I am healthy and strong. If you have the disease, you can overcome it." John Green closes this book with a question that is really a challenge. A doctor named KJ Sung told him, "If everyone had access to the kind of healthcare available in wealthy countries, how many of those 1.25 million people who die of TB every year would survive?" "None," said the doctor. "0 people should die of TB. 0. We have a cure. We have the knowledge. We have the tools. More than 150 million people have died of tuberculosis since we discovered how to cure it. That is not a tragedy of nature. That is a choice, a collective choice about whose lives we value and whose we don't." But here's the thing Green wants you to hold on to. It can be a different choice. The world will be different a generation from now. The question is whether we'll look back in gratitude at the virtuous cycles we chose to build, or in horror at the vicious ones we chose to ignore. Everything Is Tuberculosis by John Green is available now. If this video moved you, the book will do so 10 times over. Green writes about history and injustice, and a boy named Henry with the same warmth and urgency that made the fault in our stars impossible to put down. Except this time, the stakes are real and the deaths are preventable. If you want to do something, visit Partners in Health or Treatment Action Group. And if you want to support Henry directly, his YouTube channel is linked in the description below. If you found this summary valuable, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Which part of this story hit you the hardest? I'll see you in the next one.